Member for Vermilion Lloydminster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wasn't planning on speaking on this bill tonight, but I feel compelled to, so please, I beg the forbearance of my colleagues in the House if my comments seem a little bit scattered as I am speaking with very few notes. I'd like to make a few comments, first of all. I think that the province of Alberta has a great education system. I think a big part of the reason for our province's success over time, over the last not just 40 years, but 50, 60, 70 years, is that in fact we do have a great education system, and that system is a credit to everyone who's involved with it. Not us here, but rather the teachers, the parents, the trustees, and all those who have safeguarded that system over the years. In fact, our education minister, shortly after the election, attended a conference in Korea in which the province of Alberta's logo was included amongst the top education systems in the world. And I think we can be justifiably proud of that. Now, one of the principles that we can also be very proud of is the principle of choice. Under the overriding and overarching education system that we have in this province, we have a great deal of choices available to parents. We have public schools, we have separate schools, we have charter schools, we have private schools, at least in some areas, and yes, we also have home schools. And I guess tonight, here in the chamber, and part of my reason for speaking is tonight I had something confirmed to me which I've known for a long time, but now I know that it's also an opinion held by the leader of the New Democrat opposition, and that is that homeschoolers are part of a fringe group. Well, I'm a homeschooler, sir. I guess maybe more correctly put, we're a homeschool family. My two sons didn't learn a whole lot from me other than maybe swearing and a few other bad habits. But I will tell you that my wife, who is a doctor of veterinary medicine, who holds a Master's of Business Administration degree, felt it's important enough to teach our sons at home that she put her careers on hold for 15 years so she could teach them at home. Now, that was a choice, Mr. Speaker, that we made, and I will tell you that both my mother-in-law and my mother were public school teachers. And they did not support the choice that my wife and I made at the time because they felt that it wasn't a good parental choice. So it's not like we had a ton of support. It's not like we had support in our community. In fact, Mr. Speaker, part of the reason why we chose this route is because our oldest son, who now is in his third year of a Master's of Divinity program at Concordia Lutheran Seminary, and God willing, in a couple of years will be ordained as a Lutheran pastor. He taught himself to read at the age of 2 and was reading at a grade 9 level by the time he was age 6. And when my wife told a good friend of ours, a teacher, about this young man, that teacher said, you know, I used to really enjoy having students like Roland in my class, but now they're just a problem. And so you can understand why we made the decision to homeschool instead of sending this young, precocious man who we thought had great potential, and I think he still has great potential, to a school where he would create a teacher a problem. And so we made that decision, and you know, we're glad we did. That was 1993, and I'd like to point out that not too long before 1993, in fact, homeschooling was illegal in this province, and you could be taken to court if you tried to teach your kids at home. And you might find it also interesting, Mr. Speaker, to know that homeschooling is still illegal in 2 EU countries, namely Germany and Sweden. You can't homeschool your kids in Germany or Sweden, and in fact there was a story in the recent Epoch Times about a family who's become educational refugees from Sweden who have actually left Sweden to live on an island that is technically in Denmark so that they don't have their kids taken away from them by the Swedish government for homeschooling. So, Mr. Speaker, it's interesting. Parenthetically, I'll tell you a story. When we lived in Germany, 12 years ago, and our youngest son was 10 years old. Our younger son is also in university. He's taking a poli-sci degree at U of C. He walked down the street one day and he was going to go buy buns at the bakery, and an elderly lady stopped him and said, "Why aren't you in school?" Because we found out later that, in fact, everyone in Germany is entitled to be a truant officer. And so if they find a child on the streets during school hours, they're entitled to report that child, at least in the state of Bavaria where we lived. Now, my son knew exactly what this woman was asking him, and what he did, he feigned that he didn't understand German, which actually worked pretty well. But that's the kind of thing that homeschoolers fight against, and sadly, we still fight that in the legislature in 2012. So why am I concerned about this? Well, I will tell you that we talk a lot about the concerns of homeschoolers, but I've been there, my friends. I've been there. I've taken the ridicule from people who say, you know, your kid's going to be a weirdo, your kid's going to be socially inept, and all those things. And I'll tell you, you have to stand up for what you believe in. And my wife, I think, did a tremendous job in helping those boys along, and I'm terribly proud of her. And so, Mr. Speaker, I have to tell you that where this then leads me today is that before the election, knowing that I was a homeschool parent, I was approached by a lot of homeschool parents, but not just homeschool parents, but others. And they told me that they chose homeschooling for a lot of different reasons, but that the primary reason, Mr. Speaker, was one of choice. One of choice and one of freedom. One of the opportunity to choose when you taught, where you taught, what you taught, and why you taught. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, that's why we chose homeschooling, and if you ask homeschooling parents, that's why they choose it. This government has always supported homeschooling as a choice. This province is one of only 2 provinces in the Dominion where homeschoolers are in fact funded by the provincial government. Alberta and one other province, that's it. Everywhere else, if you decide to homeschool, you're on your own. In fact, we have parents from Saskatchewan moving across to the other side of the border to live on the Alberta side of Lloydminster so they can get funding for their homeschool programs. So I will tell you, Mr. Speaker, that in the spirit of some of the discussion we had during the throne speech debate, when we talked about working together, I have to tell you that I am bothered by my colleagues in the official opposition when they stand up and insist that all of the changes made to the Education Act were purely due to their efforts. Guys, it wasn't just you. There were people on this side of the House, many of my colleagues, who also had the ear of the Education Minister and urged him to make changes to Bill 2 as it was in the spring session. So maybe, guys, you could follow the lead of Harry S. Truman when he said, "It is amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit." And so, Mr. Speaker, in that spirit, I think that we have an excellent piece of legislation. And I'd like to congratulate the Education Minister because he's brought forward this education in a real consultative format and in a way that I do believe has improved it. Is it perfect? No. Show me a piece of legislation that is. But it is very good, and if it's not perfect, if there's areas where it needs improvement, I urge honourable members to bring forward amendments in Committee of the Whole. And so I'd like to close, Mr. Speaker, by encouraging my colleague, the Honourable Minister of Education, because to me, what he has shown through the development of this bill as he brings it forward is that he's following the words of Indira Gandhi. Indira Gandhi once said, there are 2 kinds of people, those who do the work and those who take the credit. Try to be in the first group. There's less competition there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.